They told thousands of people to leave. They marched through streets demanding foreigners be removed from South Africa. Emotions ran high, tensions escalated, and communities were left divided. But now, the same figure at the center of that storm is speaking again, and this time the message is confusing the very people who once supported him. In a viral live broadcast, activist Phakel'umthakathi claims he is preparing something unexpected. He says he will travel across African countries, visiting those who allegedly left South Africa after the June 30th protests. Not to confront them, not to distance himself, but to check on them, confirm their well-being, and, in his words, revive the spirit of Ubuntu. Before we go further, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any updates. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share.
South Africa for 5 years. So I'm calling for my African brothers. I'm going to facilitate. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to visit these countries. I'm going to visit you, my brothers and sisters, in your countries to revive the spirit of Africa, to revive the spirit of Ubuntu. You must fight for your countries. If they kill you, they must kill all of you. You can't be scared of that, because even me, every day, yesterday I came late in the march because I had an intelligence that some people were waiting somewhere for me. I had to change 2 vehicles so that I can get to the march. Because if I used my car to come to the march, I would have died yesterday. That's why I kept postponing the times, because the intelligence was telling me, Uguti, there's things that people are trying to do. And thanks to the police, thanks to the intelligence. And all those that are criticizing us, they don't know that we go through. So, ngangilapha ngimemezela umhla ka 30 June 2026. Abantu bathi ngiyahlanya ngenza yonke into. But more than 2 million illegal immigrants have left this country. As we are talking right now, we have our intelligence in the borders. People are leaving because they know ukuthi sizoqhubeka nalento. They understand. Today I got a call from a guy from Zimbabwe. We spoke for 30 minutes. He was ebonga abantu base South Africa. Enbonga abantu base South Africa. Ebonga ukuthi nibakhumbuza ukuthi bona bangamadoda ngempela. If you are a man, you are calling yourself a man, and you are here in South Africa. You left your child, you left your wife, you left your relatives, you left your own place, your own land of your forefathers, and you are sitting in South Africa for 5 years without seeing your child. But you got a nerve to confront Phakel'umthakathi. Ohlala neingane zakho, obona ingane zakho every after 2 weeks. You want to confront me and say I'm xenophobic, I hate Africans. You hate yourself. You hate yourself as an African. You can't leave your child. You can't be away from your child for 2 years. You cannot be away from your child for the whole year. Only soldiers are allowed to do that. Not a person enjoying himself, drinking all the savannas and black label and everything here in South Africa, enjoying that because they say black label in South Africa is more nicer. Is more nicer than the black label in their country. Can you really come to another country just for fun, for food and other things, and leaving your kids alone in your own country? My African brothers, let us bring back the true African spirit. The true African spirit, the first line of defense of any household is a man. Umusu sesa South Africa wena uhlelo ubusa ingane zakho ishiye zonke ngokwesintu sethu thina abantu abansundu. Into umsebenzi
But here is where it starts to sound contradictory. Because this is the same movement that pushed for foreigners to leave. The same voices that framed their message as protection of local resources, jobs, and national identity. And now suddenly, the language has shifted to unity, compassion, and interconnected African identity. So what changed? And more importantly, what is really happening behind this sudden shift in narrative? Stay with this, because the deeper you go into this story, the more questions it raises about power, influence, and responsibility in moments of mass protest. Before we break it all down, make sure you like the video and subscribe to stay updated, because stories like this don't stay still for long. They evolve, they escalate, and sometimes they resurface in ways no one expects. To understand why this is causing such intense debate right now, you have to go back to the atmosphere that led to the June 30th protests. South Africa has long struggled with complex tensions around immigration, unemployment, informal economies, and pressure on public services. Over time, these issues have often been blamed on foreign nationals living and working in the country, particularly in urban and township communities. Against this backdrop, activist groups and movements began mobilizing, calling for action against undocumented migrants. One of the most vocal among these figures was Phakel'umthakathi, who gained attention online and on the ground for his strong rhetoric and participation in organized marches. During the June 30th mobilization, large groups gathered in different parts of the country. The message was consistent across many gatherings: foreigners should leave, and enforcement should be strengthened. Videos circulated widely on social media showing confrontations, chants, and speeches that intensified the already heated national debate. In the aftermath, reports began emerging that some foreign nationals felt pressured to relocate or move away from certain areas, though the scale and nature of those movements remain widely debated and difficult to independently verify. And then, weeks later, something unexpected happened. A live video appeared online showing Phakel'umthakathi speaking directly to viewers, calm in tone, almost reflective. But his message was not what many expected. He stated that he intended to travel to different African countries, specifically to check on individuals who had left South Africa following the June 30th events. He framed it as a humanitarian gesture, saying he wanted to ensure they were safe and doing well. But he also added something that immediately sparked controversy. He said Africans should fight for their respective countries, just as South Africans are doing. At first glance, the message sounds like a shift toward reconciliation. But when placed against the backdrop of the protests, it raises a deeper contradiction. And this is where the story takes a sharper turn. Because while he invoked Ubuntu, a philosophy rooted in unity, humanity, and interconnectedness, critics immediately pointed out the tension between that message and the events that preceded it. What does Ubuntu mean when people feel forced out of a country? And can it still be used as a symbol of unity after division has already been created? But here is where things get more complicated, because the timeline of events reveals a pattern that is not as simple as a single protest or a single statement. Leading up to June 30th, online rhetoric intensified for weeks. Social media platforms became spaces of heated debate, with hashtags, videos, and live discussions amplifying frustration around immigration and economic pressure. In the final days before the protests, calls for mass mobilization grew louder. Organizers framed the event as a stand for local communities, while critics warned that the language being used risked escalating into xenophobia and violence. On June 30th, demonstrations took place. In several areas, gatherings remained relatively controlled, while in others, tensions escalated. Videos from those scenes spread rapidly online, shaping public perception both inside and outside South Africa. In the days immediately after, political leaders and civil society groups responded. Some condemned the rhetoric and urged calm. Others emphasized the underlying socioeconomic frustrations that had fueled the protests in the first place. But what few people noticed at the time was how quickly the narrative online began to shift again. And this is the part few people are talking about. Within a short period, the same voices that had amplified separation began introducing language of reflection, responsibility, and even unity. Among them was Phakel'umthakathi, whose live broadcast marked a noticeable tonal shift from confrontation to what appeared to be reconciliation. However, not everyone interpreted it that way. Some viewers questioned whether this was genuine reflection or strategic repositioning. Others wondered whether the travel announcement was symbolic, performative, or intended to reshape public perception after intense criticism. And that leads to one of the biggest unanswered questions in this entire situation. Was the original message about removal and separation ever meant to be permanent, or was it always part of a broader narrative strategy that is now evolving in real time? Because when public movements shift tones so quickly, it often raises questions about leadership, intention, and accountability. And this is where the hidden angles begin to surface. There is also the question of influence. In modern protest movements, especially those amplified through social media, individuals can gain rapid prominence without formal structure or oversight. That raises concerns about who sets the message, who follows it, and who is responsible when outcomes become harmful or divisive. In this case, critics argue that the emotional intensity of the June 30th protests may have left lasting consequences for individuals who felt targeted or unsafe. Supporters, however, argue that the movement was about addressing real pressures faced by local communities. But when the same figure who helped amplify that movement later speaks of unity and Ubuntu, it creates a tension that cannot easily be ignored. So, what is really driving this shift? Is it personal reflection after public backlash? Is it a genuine attempt to repair fractured relationships? Or is it an effort to reframe the narrative after the fact? And more importantly, who gets to define Ubuntu in a moment like this? Because Ubuntu is not just a word. It is a principle deeply tied to identity, ethics, and social cohesion across many African societies. When it is invoked in political or social conflict, it carries weight. But when it appears alongside contradictory actions, it becomes a point of public debate. The political and social impact of this story goes beyond one individual. It reflects a broader pattern seen in many countries where migration, unemployment, and resource pressure become flashpoints for public unrest. South Africa is not unique in this regard. Across the continent and beyond, similar tensions have emerged where economic hardship intersects with identity politics. And in those moments, language becomes powerful. Words like foreigners, community, belonging, and unity can shift from neutral concepts into emotionally charged triggers. Economically, these tensions can affect local businesses, informal trade networks, and community relations. Socially, they can deepen divisions between groups who may have lived side by side for years. Politically, they can influence policy debates, policing priorities, and national discourse. And this is where the story connects to something larger than a single protest movement. Because when narratives of exclusion and unity exist side by side, societies often find themselves pulled in two directions at once. Public reaction to Phakel'umthakathi's latest comments has been deeply divided. On social media, some users interpreted his message as a necessary evolution, suggesting that leaders should be allowed to grow and reflect after intense public action. They argue that visiting affected individuals and checking on their well-being could be seen as an attempt to repair relationships. Others were far more critical. They pointed to what they see as inconsistency, questioning how someone can promote removal in one moment and unity in the next. For them, the invocation of Ubuntu felt contradictory given the context of the protests. Media coverage has reflected this divide. Some platforms focus on the reconciliation angle, while others emphasize the earlier protests and the broader tensions around immigration in South Africa. Government and civil society voices have largely maintained caution, urging calm and discouraging any rhetoric that could further inflame tensions. But there's been no unified official response directly addressing the latest travel claims. And that leads us into what happens next. If Phakel'umthakathi follows through on his stated intention to travel, it could shift the narrative again. Interviews with individuals who left South Africa could bring new perspectives or further controversy, depending on what is revealed and how it is framed. There is also the possibility that scrutiny increases around past statements and actions tied to the June 30th protests. In highly charged political environments, moments like this often lead to renewed attention on earlier events, sometimes triggering investigations or formal reviews depending on the severity of reported incidents. But at this stage, much remains uncertain. What is clear is that the story is no longer just about one protest or one statement. It has become a case study in how quickly public narratives can shift, how influence operates in digital spaces, and how difficult it is to separate intention from impact once mass movements are set in motion. And so the final question is not just about what Phakel'umthakathi will do next. It is about what this moment reveals about the broader society watching it unfold. When unity is invoked after division, does it heal what was broken? Or does it simply expose how deep the fracture already was? That is the question now hanging over this entire story. And the answer, for now, is still unfolding.